So this is case studies and award-winning pool installations. I've got two, it's my pleasure to have two very, very qualified and unique figures in our industry that I'm really, really fortunate to work with on some of their projects. My name's Kurt Rapp, and I'm with the Tile Doctor. I'm out of Atlanta, Georgia. And we've got Jimmy Reed, who is known for his glass tile installations, all glass tile pools. And Bo Barnett is one of the top pool builders in the top 50 according to Aqua Magazine. And he's here today by invitation specifically to highlight a really unique trend that's happening in our industry, which is large gauge panels in pools. He's got 14 or 15 under his belt today. I don't know, Jimmy, you must have 200 glass tile pools, so, but we've got some real experts here, and I want them to kind of give a quick introduction of who they are, and I'm going to go through the slides because if you're here for the CEU, there's some disclaimers that we have to show you. You don't have to read them, but I do have to run through them. So I'll have Jimmy kind of introduce himself as far as his background and why he's here.
All right, thanks, Kurt. So yes, my name is Jimmy Reed. My company is Rock Solid Tile. We're in Los Angeles. We've been in business for close to 5 decades and started out as a traditional tile contractor doing mostly interiors and just kind of morphed into specifically doing swimming pools, and now at this point for the last many, many years, all we do is swimming pools, and most of them are all tile glass pools. So occasionally we'll do some other type of stone mosaic or even some large format at this point, but that's what we do. We do tile swimming pools.
Good morning, my name is Bo Barnett. My company is KB Custom Pools. We're located in Austin, Texas. This is our 17th year in business. We focus on full outdoor master planning. So anything from casitas and gourmet kitchens and fireplaces to aquatic water shaping as well. Really excited to be here. I think one of the reasons I was asked to come is because of what's going on with some of the integration of the large panel porcelain that's being introduced to the aquatic environment, which, this is not a brand new product, but it's just a little bit more of an innovative way to use this product in an aquatic environment. So I'm very excited to be here.
So what I'm going to do next is just kind of run through some beauty shots and let Jimmy comment on, he's got the next few, just a little bit about each project, just a snippet of each, because we're going to drill into a little bit more later. But just, I wanted to start everybody off with the sizzle first. So this is a pretty important pool. So.
Okay, so this one here on the left is a project that was designed by Paolo Benedetti.
They can only see that one, sorry. That's your next slide.
Okay, got it. Then that main picture, and that's a project up in the hills in Malibu, and it was an all-tile pool. It's kind of a suspended vessel, and what you can't see in this image is that on the other side of the pool, down the hillside, is a spa built in the same type of design with the cortine walls and tile interior. So it's just a beautiful project. It's clean and simple, and it was.
And that house is for rent, right?
That house is, yeah, it's constantly for rent.
Like
and
by the night?
Week? I'm not sure. I mean, by the night, I think, but it's also done.
It's visually stunning, though.
It's for, they mostly use it for production, I believe. I mean, I see it all the time in all kinds of
movies,
different publications and so forth. This is a pool up in Bel Air, and this one had some major engineering problems. So the pool was designed to be a spill all the way around where the black granite wall is. We installed all the granite and the interior of the pool, but the pool sank about 3 inches on this far side. So the pool now is not an overflow pool. They supported it somehow so it wouldn't drop anymore, but it was so far out of whack that they just kind of changed the system and the way they run it. It's beautiful. And I think at one time it was the most expensive asking price for a house in LA. I don't know what's happening with it now, but it was a good project to work on, but they had some big problems on that.
Now, this one was a higher asking price recently, right?
I think so. I think this sold for, I don't know, a lot of money. But the owner of this, they owned it for several years. They built it and owned it for several years until the gentleman died, I think a year ago or so.
This is in Palm Desert?
This is in Palm Desert. It's an all-tile Bizaza project, and there's approximately 20,000 square feet of glass material in this pool and in all the bodies of water surrounding the home.
Wow.
On the property, yeah. This is another Bizaza project. Just a real clean.
Looks like a hotel.
It looks like, yeah, it does look like a hotel. Very resort looking, but that pool is 4.5 feet all the way across and square transition from walls to floor. So it was an interesting installation. I was fortunate enough to be with this project from the beginning before they dug it and in the design process of the construction of it. So it was good for me to be able to spec this type of construction for what the owner wanted. They didn't want a shallow and a deep end, so we were able to suggest that they built it with square transition everywhere. So it was a super clean installation. And a huge lounge on the house side and a very clean, simple, but elegant stairway entry into that pool.
Yeah, we're going to see some pictures of this one later under construction.
So this is an entry we did in Arizona for Rick Chafee, and that again is all glass on the interior of this round vessel. It's a perimeter. He built stainless trays that went right up to the Lautner type edge on this round vessel, and so his synthetic turf went right up to it, so the water looks like it's just a sheet of glass sitting on the lawn, basically, with a bunch of steppers going over. Okay, so this is a Sea-Cheese project we did. We were brought on to this. I was called directly from the homeowner on this project. It was a pretty significant remodel. She said, "Oh, can you tile the pool?" And it was like just a very old style project, pool, and so I was able to bring in a designer and pool contractor on this, and we really just completely redid the entire yard and backyard and water features, added this water feature and connected it to the other 2 water features on the property.
So Bo, you're up on this one. This particular slide I put in here because it really shows some interesting details of a pool that he did sort of fit the yard and fit the space and how it all matches up. But Bo's a designer and builder, so that's kind of unique. Not always, but it's kind of unique because before us, like Randy Angel, who was up here before, said, you know, he designs it, or Kurt Kreister says we design it, but we don't always have control over the builder and what happens after that. So Bo has that situation both going on for him.
Yeah, the advantage for me in that situation is I really, I'm understanding the client's vision, but then I'm able to understand their expectations throughout the process as well. With this swimming pool, they really wanted, geometric sharp lines. We integrated the spa into the lines of the swimming pool, which give the spillway a different style of dimension. They wanted fire, but they didn't want to sit. They didn't need it to be functional. So we did a 35-foot long fire bar across the top of that elevated beam right there. And then we actually used an Indonesian stone on that particular project. And, the actual fascia that we're used to seeing was done in a horizontal. We actually flipped it on a vertical. To give the wall a little bit more impactful look, make it look a little bit taller. And then toward the front of the swimming pool or house side, the pool actually spills into a hidden vault that's underneath all of the gravel. And so again, this is a reflective tile, and when the sun's not over the top of it, it's solid black. And so again, we had to inform our client, look, if you're going to use this tile in an exterior in an exterior situation to where you're going to have a lot of direct sun, you're going to have to insulate it with the water. So as they're sitting in their living room facing the actual swimming pool, they're seeing that negative edge and that tile, the water actually flowing to it, and then again disappearing into the gravel because the rest all the way up to the home is xeriscaped.
And that fire feature hides all that dead space behind it that you don't see. And then you've got this elevation over on the left side there.
It does. It's hard to see. There's about 48 inches total of front to back. So we created, a staircase that was a little bit grand. It's not really functional for a social space, but it kind of marries the pavers to the sharp lines of the swimming pool. And again, we're not in control, and sometimes guys like Kirk are. Sometimes we don't get to master plan the entire yard. We don't get to help them with things like landscaping. So I have to consider things that may be in the background, things that aren't getting addressed. So Kurt, you're absolutely right. We elevated that wall to kind of hide what was going on with some really bad dead grass areas and some things on the left side of that property. And now you're seeing this beautiful wall with these scuppers that are kind of cascading onto that tanning ledge, rather than seeing, the reason they can't grow grass, it's very, very shallow rock. It gets hot and it dies within, weeks. So rather than turfing the entire area, which is just huge, we try to mask it with that elevated wall.
Okay. This one's about hardscapes. I thought it was a good picture to just kind of show the use of porcelain tile.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
These folks originally just had a square pool with an interior spa, and they wanted more wow factor out of their outdoor living environment. And at the same time that we were renovating that swimming pool, they had Cool Coat, traditional classic acrylic style overlay over concrete. And so we didn't have a lot of room to play with, a natural stone being an inch or 2 inches thick. So we did the wood-looking porcelain, and it gave us the availability to not have to control that elevation too much. It allowed us to control the drainage and everything and hide it really well without having to demolish their entire hardscape. And so that's why we introduced the porcelain, because it is a thin veneer and it's a great high traffic veneer for flooring. This pool we built right behind Brushy Creek. The folks wanted, natural tones, natural finishes. As a designer, I hate going out and building a pool that looks like Fred Flintstone built it, with big chunky boulders all over the place. It's hard to make it look really natural. The idea behind this, when these water features are not running all at the same time, it's a really nice mirror finish against the backdrop of that creek. And then, they have several kids. I think they have 4 kids, so they wanted deck jets coming from behind it, the bubblers. I advised them against the turtles on the tanning ledge, and they had to have those too. So there's some things that you can't control as a designer. You just have to absolutely make the best of what you have. But this is one of those that it does show well, but there's a lot of really fun stuff that those guys can turn on. The back basin actually has a catch basin large enough to where the kids can jump in there and play around in a shallow water environment right outside of the creek. So it serves several purposes on this guy.
So I picked this out of the ones you sent me because, and I titled it Many Features, because there's a lot in this. And it really kind of shows what in people's wish list. So you've got really the planters there with a kind of a rustic, stucco wall with a water feature in the middle, a fire feature in front of you. You've got a spa with that edge, and then the tanning area that equals the spa there. Is that what that is? I never asked you, but that's what it looks like. So this guy's kind of everything in one small package.
He wanted it all. He wanted everything that he could fit back there, and it's actually a pretty confined space. Right behind that waterfall, there's only about 3 feet to his back fence, and we masked that with some landscaping. But what we did, we had a custom hand-beaten copper fire pit that they wanted, that you see right in the middle of this guy. But then we had a 12-foot long ballast wall of water that was matching that same copper that was fabricated. So as you look from their back patio, you're actually seeing that 12-foot wall of water, and it cascades behind the two reflection rectangles right there. And I call them reflection rectangles. They're perimeter overflow spa, and then it has a tanning ledge that has about a 30-degree notch, and then we did an all-glass jewelscapes or glass aggregate plaster inside of that. What I did is put a large main drain cover that disperses the water sideways, and did 4-inch plumbing to make sure it came out very, very slow so that you don't see any kind of ripples. And what that's given me is two identical reflection areas that when you're inside the home, it's very hard to distinguish that that's a spa sitting next to a tanning ledge, because you really can't see the depths because of the mirror finish. So when the wall of water is on behind those reflection areas, it just kind of disappears, and you still have those two mirror finishes side by side. What you can't see is there's floating steps in front of that to access both of them. And with the tile that we chose, we accidentally stumbled on a really cool feature, is that the tile does have a really nice iridescent finish in certain lightings. And with the limestone that we chose for the floating steps, when you get the reflection, it gives a gorgeous kind of opalescent finish to it from inside the home. And we didn't plan that. It just sometimes you get lucky.
So here's another one. I've actually been to this one. It was in our tour that we took, and this has that, I don't know what you call it, but it's almost a rainfall water feature, and then there's a sitting area and a TV, and then of course you've got the fire feature. I mean, there's a lot going on here.
This is another guy that said, hey, I want everything in my backyard, and I'm going to give you about 20 feet to work with. This gentleman's foundation was 22 feet above grade, and then we only had 20 feet of workspace to build this pool up to that point. The hardest part of building this pool is that the neighbor was so close. When we erected all of our forms and everything, you know, all of the supports went into his yard. And so we walked out there on a Saturday, and all of our forms had been cut off with a chainsaw, every single one of them. And so he said, don't ever come into my yard again. Don't put your wood in my yard. So we had to build this thing in 3-foot, basic 3-foot integrals, let it cure, 3 foot further, 3 foot further. So this pool took almost a year to build, but you're right. It has a custom individual nozzle rain descent that's recessed into the cantilever roof. That's a TV that you see behind that, and then there's actual bar stools right up against that area to where the rain falls behind the bar stools.
And you were telling me the other night that actually has a cooling effect in that area, right?
It does. It'll actually cool the ambient temperature of that sitting space, which on the other side it's a sunken fire pit area, by 15 to 20 degrees. So if it's 100 degrees outside, you know, you're sitting in an 80-degree environment under that shade with that aerated water. So this turned out great. We wrapped this spa. This is a perimeter overflow spa, and then we wrapped it with fire and tempered glass. And then we're actually far enough away from this to where we didn't have to worry about kiddos and things like that touching that glass. So it turned out really great.
So I know you guys spend a lot of effort, time, and education on lighting and the effects it has. So I have a few slides of the same pool and then some other additional things to go through here. But this just shows a pool during the day, and then we go to, you know, what you can do with lighting.
Lighting is one of the things that I think are one of the most underestimated values in our industry. You can make a pretty entry-level pool spectacular in a night environment with the right lighting solutions. And so, you know, recently I've went through several lighting theory classes and really how to change the environment and how to hide your lighting, you know, not just that it doesn't face toward the home, but that you don't really see where the source of the light is. And you can in this picture. This is about an 8-year-old swimming pool, but a lot of the landscaping lighting and uplighting and things like that, you can use that in your software and your presentation to really create an environment that classes up even entry-level builds.
And this is, to me, is a good example of, the light just really pops the lightest of the glass out there. And somebody may not like that if they weren't prepared for it. So you have to.
That's a huge part of the education process of knowing how what you're installing is going to perform so that you can set correct expectations. Because if they had not have wanted to see what I call this wall like a starry night kind of look, if they wanted it to be, all one consistent color, they would have been greatly disappointed once we turned those lights on. But that is something that we talked about prior to the installation. And guys like Jimmy go above and beyond with their tile. They'll make sample boards, put them underwater, say this is what it actually looks like at your house underwater.
We're going to show some slides on that too.
Yeah, we're not always able to do that, but we do have those conversations about here's some expectations, and here's some things that you consider if you're choosing a material. You really want to know both ways that it'll perform, because it can look completely different at night than it does during the daytime. I'm also a fan of uplighting, creating uplighting on walls to create different focal points. We actually have transformers on our lighting to where everything can be the same color or everything can be individual colors. And some people like that, some people don't, but the availability is there so that you can create a custom environment for what you're doing.
So this is just another angle here, but.
Yeah, so again, this is something, in Texas we get these rustic builds, but they want modern contemporary lines. And that can be a challenge because those two don't always fit together. But I think we did a good job on producing what these folks wanted. And then again, the lighting sources have just become better and better and better over the years. We're using some of the PAL systems under the coping in certain environments to create, kind of a shadowless effect versus some of the brighter LEDs. Again, you can source the light and see where it's coming from.
So here's an interesting one. I was here when it was in gunite, and the pictures are pretty amazing. So I put the front of the slide in the main picture, but the top right is looking while you're entering the slide.
Yes,
so
sir.
Talk about how you lit this to make the glow-in-the-dark tile work.
Right. So we used a Starry Night, or it's a Reviglass product out of Spain, and we knew it glue in the dark. The problem is we've got this inside of this kind of mine shaft environment to where it's never going to get any UV lighting. So what we did, we actually recessed black lights or the UV purple looking lights in the recessed grout areas of the giant boulders that we use to cap what is basically a U-shaped, mine slide or mine shaft. And so again, about every 4 feet, there's a strip of UV that goes down and it charges all of these lights. And so if you turn all of the lights off all at the same time, these will be the only thing that's illuminated in that total environment, which is scary and cool at the same time. But it's all individually controlled so that, again, you can turn this pool any color that you want. We just found this to be a cool way to introduce the tile that we had never used before. I saw it at a show and I thought I can do some cool stuff with that. And then I had a client that said, I want to do a mine like a mine shaft. I want to go through. She originally wanted to go through a circular slide that went through a wall. I said, well, what do you think about this? I think I can pull this off and I think you'll love it. And it was hard to show this in the 3D model that we do because there's really nothing out there to present it. So what we did is just ordered some samples, made some boards out, let them charge up, and then that night she saw them. She was like, that's what I want. Yeah. And then we didn't figure out the UV light until we were almost done. And then I go, oh my God, these aren't gonna charge up. What are we gonna do? And I'm fortunate enough to be partnered with a guy that's been doing this for 47 years, and he's like, just stick UV lights in there. I said, all right, go do it. Let's see it.
So, as I said before, this is one of the main reasons, the main things we wanted to highlight here, along with Jimmy's work in glass, but this trend of the large panels and pools. And I've got some Both of you guys have gone to Italy and looked at the slabs and been to the Mirage showroom, which is the picture coming next. But tell us a little bit about this one, because we're going to see a few slides on it.
So, I've always wanted to do super exotic pools. I want to push the envelope and set trends and try to make an impact on the industry. That's part of my motivation. And the hard part of that is finding the budget, to use Carrara marble or to use, something that's a difficult mind. It's a precious material. It has very, very specific installation instructions. And when I started seeing, all the benefits of large panel, that it is, impervious to water, that it's high traffic, that it's, virtually heat resistant, I started thinking, why can't I just throw this into a swimming pool in an aquatic environment, and make it look like it's Carrara marble, without the cost of that. And so, I was, met with some hesitation on a lot of the adhesion companies and grout companies, like, you can't really do that. And I felt like I think I can. And so this particular project was our first large panel porcelain project. It used 7 panels throughout the project, and we broke 5 of them on the first try. And so the biggest challenge was getting the correct tools and getting the right education for our crews to understand how to apply it, the logistics of transporting it, and once you get that down, it's a very high performing product. This pool's almost 6 years old. The house has been sold twice. He lives in my neighborhood. We've had 0 issues with any of the porcelain at all, even in the fire environments, and then right next to it in the water environment too.
So I want to talk a little bit about the industry. This picture has Jimmy Reed in it, and my brother on the left there, in which I stretched the photo so he looks bigger than he really is. He wouldn't be happy if he was here. But this is the Mirage factory in Italy, where they produce the 2cm, 3cm tiles. And they also produce the large panels there. And what was interesting, or beyond cool for me, is that they have a whole outdoor showroom outside the showroom. And in that top right area is where they have the tiles there, but there's also barbecue areas and everything. And then they have a pool that we're standing in front of that is 100% large panel, walls, floors, everything. It's small in nature, but it's very impressive to see these large panels with virtually no grout joints or anything there. And of course, they've got the stone to like decking with, I don't know what you call it there, but that coping that drains, and it just is glass-like, the wet edge coping. Yeah, and then you've got the wood porcelain, and then you've got porcelain on the walls there. Obviously, they're selling tile, so everything's tile there. But it's a really interesting place to go and see. And then these are you two guys in Italy looking at the panels. You were there during COVID, and you were after COVID. So, but that just, Bo's not a small guy. And
kind of shows you the size of those panels.
So you've all seen them. So back to the pool, though. You heard a lot about that. These are just some beauty shots, but it's pretty impressive. This is the first pool I ever saw done in these panels. Mm-hmm. And upon close inspection, it was a learning curve for some of the things that you did, but it's beautiful in every respect. So I think you said you broke a lot trying to cut those water features in too, right?
We did. Those scuppers, because of the thin veneer, you really gotta know what you're doing as far as the cuts and having the right blades, because it's thin enough to where if you make a mistake, you can start over on a new panel. And those scuppers are close enough together that we had several that would crack in between the actual orifice, or the area in which it was penetrating, the water feature was penetrating there. So our guys got it. I knew we were going to waste some material on the first one. The manufacturer was very helpful in helping me with some of it. He didn't say you don't get 5 out of 7 back, but he did help me with some of it. And what we learned from this has allowed us to continue that and kind of push the envelopes on some of the newer stuff.
So here's one here. It's an impressive angle photo, just showing that wall. It's just striking.
It is, and you know, man, in certain lighting, this thing looks like almost like an ice cube because of the reflection of everything that's going on around it. And again, you're getting a really nice sheet of water because of the absence of grout, because it's one flat surface. And so, you know, with this pool, actually, we had already put on about 150 feet of glass tile, and he said, "It looks like the pool." And I said, "Yeah, that's what it was supposed to look like, right?" Yeah. He said, "I don't like it." And I said, "Well, I have an idea. We can take it all off and we can replace it with this." And I showed him the large panel, and there was no hesitation. Yeah. He said, "Do it immediately." And so this is a 15-foot spa that's elevated about 24 inches above the main pool body, and it has 2 fire features on 2 columns.
And that's a tanning ledge at the forefront, right?
Right, exactly. Yep.
So this one's impressive too, because you're bending tile.
Yeah, this is something that we've only done on 2 projects so far. This was the first project that I had a failure on. We initially used a cementitious adhesion and grouting method on this, and within 60 days it had delaminated. And you know, we feel it was because of the shrinkage. So we went back, we used epoxy products, and we've had 0 failures. We've had no issues whatsoever. Because of the thin veneer, you're able to kind of wrap it around a large curve, not really a tight radius, but it's impressive because the absence of grout lines make that thing look like one solid piece versus, you know, sectional.
This one here shows the use of a few small panels,
right,
with traditional glass tile in other areas and stuff, but it's a good use of maybe a beginning or a jumping off point for large panels in a pool, right?
Absolutely right. So what we did on this, we used 4 panels on the sides. This is a perimeter overflow square spa that has an interior circular spa that's all tiled inside of that. So it's a really comfy tile. All the edges are rolled. It's a really comfy seating area. But when you're looking, you know, from inside the home toward the backyard, it again looks like this really nice square reflective piece. And with the absence of the grout lines, again, the water just looks beautiful. In that far left picture, you can kind of see. It's hard to see that there's tile under there until you actually walk up on it. So that was something that we wanted to try out, something we had never done before, but homeowner absolutely loved it, and it performed really great.
This one shows the glass, but it's also a shameless plug for me, so I'm glad you sent me this.
That's what we use.
That's the only look we had into the glass, just to kind of show a little bit further into there. It kind of highlights the two substrates and how they work so well together.
Yeah, the overcast environment that this was pictured in kind of gives you a little bit more of the iridescence of the tile, and you can kind of see the beauty of the tile. So, you know, again, the idea behind a lot of these are the reflective surfaces, and because the straight edge of the large panels, it's much easier to get a perfect spillway. Yeah.
So now to keep on. Time-wise, we're going to talk a little bit about the job site conditions, and Jimmy's going to speak to that. We're going to kind of go through this pretty quick so we make sure we have times for questions and answers. But you have some jobs that are pretty mild climates, and then you have others that are not so forgiving, right?
So yes, so the previous picture was in Southern California, and I think we did that installation in the springtime. So we at most had to just shade the areas that we were working on. But as opposed to this was we actually did this project in Kansas City, but in the summertime. So it was super hot, super humid. So the contractor built a big structure over the pool himself, as opposed to like a rental tent, and air conditioned that. But that project was also exposed to freezing temperatures in the wintertime.
And this one's a little bit more of a normal size project, and then there's a small one there to the right.
Yeah, that green little, it's not even a spa, it's just kind of a wading pool, but more for a visual effect on that property.
But both very unique.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one also had tenting and air conditioning. This was done in Texas in the summertime.
And this one we're going to go back to a little bit later because it's sort of a lesson learned. you know.
Another project that was completely tented by the builder, they built the tent on this. It's a lot of glass tile in this. There's a beautiful wall.
Coming up, here's the wall.
There's a beautiful wall, and that's up against a river in Natchitoches, Louisiana. But there was tons of protection during that installation as well. All that exterior wall is all custom-made glass by Oceanside, big pieces of like pencil glass, but large pieces. A mirror wall here. This was an experiment. I designed that back wall for the reflection, and the pattern was a real cool geometric pattern, but we made it out of actual mirror, thinking that we could embed the mirror mosaic into epoxy and then use epoxy grout to protect it from any oxidation on the mirror itself from the water. It didn't work. We ended up having to redo that wall. But it was a good idea from the beginning visually, but we had to replace it with something else. This is another project we did with a builder I work with a lot and designer in LA. This is probably 300 total feet of infinity edge combined with a wet coping edge around the house side of the project. There's also a cold plunge and a spa raised on the far side of this project. This is not an all-tile pool, although there was close to 3,000 square feet of glass in this pool. The designer did a fiber optic with constellations on the bottom of the pool. So at night, of course, you can see all the stars on the bottom of the pool and the reflection of the glass in that. That was done also in the coming out of winter into the springtime. So we, again, just shaded the areas that we were working on that project.
So we're going to talk a little bit about sort of the top 5, reasons for pool success with glass tile. And we're going to just go through this pretty quick, but it's the advanced work that you do, the material selection, site visits, preparing it, setting the tile, and then turning it over. So the advanced work part, which Bo alluded to before, is you do go to great extremes to level set expectations for your clients, especially when they're spending $250,000 on glass.
And a lot of that depends also on at what point I'm brought onto the project. Sometimes the pool's already built and designed, and I have no real say in the material selection and the construction of the pool. And that actually makes a difference in the installation, the construction of the pool. Sometimes it's just, I got to use what's given to me. Other times when I'm involved earlier and we're in material selection, I can make mock-ups of variations of the color pattern and profiles that they're looking for. We can actually put these in an existing pool that they either at another home, or if it's a remodel, we can do it there. But we can see the actual pieces underwater and look at it from all different angles, especially when
this is showing the
something.
different colors grout with the same tile.
This is all the same tile with different. This is a while ago. I think we did different backing, different color bonding material, meaning thin set or epoxy, and different color grout. So yes, it's all the same glass tile material, but with a variation of installation process. Same with these. These are similar in colors. They're not the same pieces, but also with different grouting to show what it can do to the grout. And that's an example of a pool that they were not happy with the color of the material or the installation. So we created a bunch of mock-ups to redo that project for them. And that's how some of the material will look underwater.
So we did talk earlier about a lesson learned. I asked you if it was okay to include this. I've seen this
For
pool,
sure.
so you're nice enough to give me permission. I don't like to necessarily highlight the mistakes, but
Well, it's important to highlight mistakes, and so everybody can learn from that. This is a situation where I was brought on after the material had already been selected. Not only selected, but from what I recall, they were working with the manufacturer and the design team on this for like a year. By the time I was brought on, the material was already on site. So we talked about it. There was discussion about the possibilities of what could happen in the end. And because it was all not only translucent, but a lot of the material was like crystal clear. I mean, like almost magnifying the clarity of the material. What happened was water would migrate behind, and whatever was in the water or UV, whatever the material behind the glass however it was affected by UV combined with water migration, it will definitely turn color and kind of have a life of its own. With a lot of traditional material, that happens in every pool, but you just won't see it because it's being hidden. So it was difficult to pinpoint where the actual failure was on this. Of course, the owners weren't happy, regardless of who was taking the blame in the end. But that's a real concern, especially with translucent material. Now, this was done with a cementitious product, and I think if the next time we run across something like this, we would definitely do all epoxy, which we do now anyway. And most people doing glass tile pools or any type of pool installation like you, Bo,
Yes, sir.
should be doing all epoxy installation systems.
So this is a pool, we saw the finished product earlier, and
Yeah,
it shows
so-
how you were there in the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. So that one picture you can see it's not even dug yet, and then here it is in steel after excavation. And in the meantime, we had many discussions on the construction of the pool and the transitions and how that would work. And she ultimately decided a single depth pool. So we were able to do all square elevations, 0 cuts in this pool in the glass installation. It was a long process. This was a tented project also.
So this is just
Again-
a site visit early on.
Yeah, just another site visit.
Meeting with the
exactly.
clients, builder, everyone, right?
Yes.
And then we'll talk a little bit about protection. We'll go
Yeah,
through this quick, but
So it's important on our project because we're on the project for usually for several months at a time, so we can go through seasons. And not only the material, the glass tile material, usually it's glass, but the installation material needs to be staged and brought to temperature. And also the guys are working in the sun for months and months at a time, so that doesn't wear well on the installers. So we try to keep the complete environment in a comfortable.
this is the pool that
State.
had the snow on it earlier. We showed,
Yes,
right?
right. And
is the
this was
construction.
in the summertime, so it was 95 or 100 degrees with humidity when we were working, and they pumped cold air into that for a couple of months.
And the weights you use to keep the tents down.
Yeah, I usually
inside
have
here.
the general contractor, homeowner, or pool builder handle putting that protection up. We are not licensed or experienced or really knowledgeable in building tents, and we don't want to do that. So the liability is not on us. Tent companies will come in and they're fully insured specifically for that. So if something happens to that tent, if it blows away and hits a house or ruins a car, then
Their insurance
it's
takes
covered.
care of
For
it.
someone like us, builders, that would be a hard thing to get insured for.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right.
So here you're just doing the prep work, and I have a saying, mighty are the preparations, and that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say 70% of our work is in the preparation. So when I say we're on a project for 3 or 4 months at a time, a good 2 to 3 months of that is just laying out, is just sculpting that shell to the shape and dimensions that we need for a perfect installation. So a lot of it is calculation, preparing the surfaces, and like I said,
And
layout.
sometimes
a lot
things
of
aren't
mathematics.
shot right, so you've got to rebuild them.
Yeah, this one spill edge here, you can see that was by design, that big, nice rolled edge, and it was clear on the plans also, but that's what I got. The builder built it with a kind of a shorter, tighter spill there, so we had to make our own forms and go from there. A set of stairs that were not really that pleasing, so I suggested that we make nice deep treads and just for a much more elegant entry. This is a big radius wall on the interior of a pool, so those lines that you see are our wood strips that are plumb with each other. And so we put those up as our screeds, and then after those are set, then we can fill that. All that white area that's a waterproof area. The whole thing was waterproof, but that's the exposed waterproofing, and then that will get covered up with our mortar and screeded out to the exact dimension that we were.
And nothing's ever tile ready. You can see the amount of
Nothing's
mortar
tile
that's
ready.
going in this.
Oh, nothing is ever tile ready. No, we can. Yeah, we have some areas where we're 3 or 4 inches thick, so we'll have to bond it and use concrete or 50-50 or something, and do it in layers and make sure it's totally solid. Sometimes we'll have it pinned also with rebar and epoxy.
This is a couple waterproofing slides here.
Yep, this is the waterproofing phase. After all that calculation and layout, then you have to protect it. So then at that point is when we apply the waterproofing membrane material. Sometimes there's waterproofing behind our mortar. Sometimes there's a membrane that is spec'd to go onto the shell. Or sometimes we'll spray it with, like we like to use Acuron as a concrete protection system. So there, as many waterproofing layers as you can get, I think is just beneficial. The more you have, the better.
That's lunch
As
after
long as
waterproofing.
Sorry?
Lunch after waterproofing.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the most important aspects of the project, is to keep the guys happy and fed, and they kind of take that upon themselves to create their own kitchen. Yeah, so. Again, laying out, I mean, this pool, at that point, we could have been working for 2 months on the project before we were even setting tile. I hear sometimes people saying, well, we finished the project in a month, and I mean, I can't fathom that. There's no way possible to get quality, solid, and beautiful installation in a short amount of time. So, and here we're just looking at, this is that project happened to be indoors, inside a house, so the lighting was good and consistent, but we were using different lighting to kind of make sure that the installation was flat and smooth. We just take every precaution possible. So every job is different. We look at everything differently.
This has to do
from
with a
different
pool
angles.
cover, right?
Yeah, that's a spa. So we had to have, it was determined what our finish height of the spa was to have clearance for the pool cover. And then the pool water line was one tile below that. So the spa looked, it looked almost flush with the
I'm not
pool,
sure what happened
pool
there.
water line. Yeah. That's another covered pool. That's a super deep pool. You can see that pitch. It was a square, flat, shallow end, and then a straight pitch down to the deep end, all square transition. That deep end was, I think, 11.5 feet deep, so it's a pretty big residential pool. And we had a nice custom mural flooring for that.
So I know I've heard you say many times that nothing underwater is really hidden. Some people think it's underwater, you don't worry about the details.
Yeah, I don't agree with that.
I have some details here to show people.
It's a little more magnified, and so a lot of times the water will bring attention to the detail, which I like. To me, the details are everything, because if you have a fine detail like that, you hopefully have that level of care and preparation that goes into every layer before that. So. These are our pictures, of course, but yeah, it's pretty unique, I think, and perfect details. And a lot goes into this. I mean, like I said, as a company, we've been doing it for 5 decades, but each project has that history behind it that goes into every single detail that we do.
So the next ones are just kind of closing out.
Just closing out.
How you turn it over, handing over the baby, right? Because you've taken a lot of pride and ownership. I hear you say over and over that each one's special and each one
is special.
different.
Yeah. So I mean, handing these over, I like to, when possible, to be able to put the first bit of water in it after they're cured. Of course, most of these older projects are cementitious installations, so they definitely had 21 to 28 day minimum cure times. A lot of times the projects we do will finish up our scope, and then there's so many other things going on in the project that
was a few years ago. That's definitely cementatious product, right?
Definitely, yeah.
Oh, you look a little younger.
Yeah. And thank you. Yeah. Yeah. That was a epoxy install, but still the same thing. Everything needs some cure time. Even epoxy, we give it some time.
We didn't talk about that detail, but we've got a few minutes, so talk about the detail there.
The toe kick detail?
Yeah, the toe kick.
Yeah, so the designer on that, a guy named Doug Johnson out of Texas, he was the builder on this as well. And he created this toe kick detail around the entire perimeter of the pool on the bottom, and all of his suctions and returns and lighting is in that toe kick. So on all the walls in that pool, there's not one penetration in the walls anywhere. That was pretty unique. That was a fun project.
Pretty clean looking.
Very clean, yeah. So at nighttime, and it's also indoors, inside the house. So at night, it's just got this crazy glow that just comes from the floor. It's really beautiful.
Okay, so my goal was to leave about 10 minutes for questions.
Thank you.
You've seen some really unique installations from some people that have a lot of history behind it. So I wanted to make sure you guys had time for questions now, or certainly if, afterwards they'll be available also. So any questions right now?
What was the question? I couldn't hear.
The UV glowing tile.
So that's a Revi glass. They're out of Spain, and then I believe it's called the Illumina series. And there's several companies that I've met here at the show that can also reproduce that. But what I've seen here at the show are full sheets of glow in the dark tile, whereas that just had sporadic one tile.
Blended in.
Blended in, exactly right, yeah. So,
And there's also a glow-in-the-dark grout option too, so, yeah.
As for on your large format that you're using in pools, are you just siliconing the miter or using epoxy?
so we've done it both ways. With the silicone, to me, is the best for expansion, for sure. But it also leaves a little bit to be desired because some of that silicone can bead up, and it tends to kind of almost show where the water's not. And for my clients, I told them, look, even if I have to come back and regrout these corners every year or every other year, would you rather kind of have a visible line there where it's really hard to hide the silicate? But with the grout, again, we can, with a company like Lidocol, we can almost match almost any color that we're doing to where it's really seamless. And so we did have, actually on the pool or the spa that you saw that was all glass and that had the panels on the outside, on one of the corners we did have a crack. But my guys went out there and within 15 minutes they just removed that grout, replaced it, and we were out of there. It's just, some of those things that are pushing the envelope are going to require a little bit more maintenance and a little bit more aftercare, and your client just has to know that so that they're prepared for that. Hey guys, this is really unique. It's really kind of pushing the envelope, but here's some of the things that we've experienced and some of the things that you'll have to do as an owner after we leave. And we can help you with that, but these are your responsibilities after we leave.
I would stay away from the silicone for the miter joints. Even on glass, silicone will definitely repel the glass, so it's going to roll over that silicone much differently. Repel the water. So it'll roll over, the water will roll over that differently than the porcelain or glass, whatever you're sealing. And also, it just doesn't last that long. It will definitely get water behind it and corrode and get moldy and just get ugly. So like Bo's saying, I would personally do epoxy on all the seams and just be prepared to go back if necessary.
So Jimmy, even on your outside corners, you're epoxying that?
Yes, we are, correct. Yep. I know a lot of the pros in the industry are saying that you have to have a silicone joint at those transitions. I would argue that a bit, just based on experience. I think if you have a solid packed joint and it's with the proper material and also with the proper maintenance, Bo mentioned about having some of the spas running 24/7. So in those situations, I mean, there's specific areas that need specific care and maintenance. So, you gotta, if you want it to last forever, you gotta kind of maintain it properly.
But a qualifier there, if you're doing the work and you're following the industry standards, P602, the EJ171 for expansion joints, if the client's willing to agree to it, you need to make sure you're covered. And like Bo said, you level set expectations that, hey, we may have to come back every year or whatever. It's not a failure, but we've chosen this for aesthetic reasons or whatever that reason is. But if you ever get into a lawsuit and the attorney brings out the TCNA handbook and says, did you follow this, you'll probably lose if it gets ugly. So that's just something to keep in mind.
And that's something that's very important too, because a lot of some of what you're going to see today at the show, they have the European ISO, which is basically the handbook on what they approve. That's different from ANSI standards in the United States. And so I'm not saying don't do it if it's not up to ANSI standards. What I'm saying is you need to communicate that with your client and let them know up front, this has been proven in other areas, but they don't have the same standards as we do here. We feel like we can control those variables and create a good performing product for you, but you need to be aware of this, prior to that purchase or prior to that, especially on big jobs, because most big jobs are going to have clients that are affluent enough to go through all the details.
And a lot of clients don't want to see expansion joints, and they'll buy into it if you present it to them properly. And Jimmy's has always said that anything below water is a controlled environment, and you don't really need them there. But if you follow the standards, they're required. So it's really just making sure you communicate that with your client, and they'll override it and say, on commercial projects, and say, no, I got to have expansion joints. Mm-hmm. So any other questions? Sorry.
Yeah, I got one. So on the mirrored wall that you did you come up with an alternative method of doing the same thing?
Not doing the same thing. The client was, we were all pretty disappointed that it didn't work, and it failed fairly quickly. I think within 2 years, you could really see the black oxidation and bleeding off the joints. So we replaced it with an iridescent glass mosaic.
But I mean, if you wanted to duplicate that.
Sorry?
If you wanted to duplicate that, is there another material now that you...
Well, yeah, I mean, we could have used a platinum mosaic, but not in that shape of that design that we did, because they were bigger pieces. So we did do it in an iridescent mosaic that kind of, I mean, it didn't really replicate it. It still looks pretty good, but it wasn't how it was designed originally and how it looked in the beginning. It was beautiful in the beginning. Yeah.
From an installation perspective, the large format where you had a delamination failure, it seems you guys have transitioned away from cementitious adhesion and merging into the epoxy world. I see a lot of the projects are also very diverse in their climates. Are you finding a product that is useful in each climate independent of the other projects, or are you still in a very trial phase of this installation?
That's probably a better question for Jimmy.
So I'm not finding that it's all of a sudden changing now. We've been seeing this coming for quite a while, I think. 100% of our installations are with the highest quality materials that we can get. And it doesn't matter if it's a high-end glass material or even a low-end ceramic. We will do all the preparation and installation techniques and implement the materials the same regardless. So we have definitely gotten away from the cementitious installation process. Of course, behind that is all the mortar beds and the sculpting of the projects is with traditional mortar. But we protect that mortar with the proper waterproofing that coincides with the epoxy installation. And I'll say it, I mean, Lidocol is the company that we use and we have been using for years. And I don't see any reason to stray from that at this point.
And to answer your question about climate, for us, we don't have to worry about freezes as much. We did 2 years ago, we had an abnormal winter to where we got into the single digits for almost a week, which was crazy. But for us, it's usually heat control. So the tinning and things of that in the summertime. It's also very important for epoxies to be climate controlled. You can't have a pallet of epoxy sit out in your parking lot in August. It's ruined. At least in Texas it is. So once we get it, we climate control it. We teach all of our masons and our guys, don't just ride around town with this in the back of your truck. It needs to be in a controlled environment to perform the way that it's engineered to perform.
All right, it's right at our stop time.
Okay.
So I appreciate you guys coming in.
Thank you,
As I said,
everybody.
they'll be down
Thank
here
you, guys.
available for any follow-up questions you may have. Thanks.
Good job, buddy.